You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Seattle Public Schools have only been back in session for a month, but it's already been a busy year for the district. We wanted to get caught up on what's been happening, so we reached out to Interim Superintendent Fred Podesta. Podesta had been Chief Operations Officer at the school district before stepping into his current role.
So it's just been great to see how strong a start we've had this year, how excited students and teachers and staff and families are to get back to school. So I really get to see a lot, and it's a great organization, and being around students is great.
And when we sat down last week, I asked him about many things, one of them, lunch. Today is the official start of the split lunch program for all of the district's high schools. That's a change that sparked big protests from students when it was announced last month. Many were concerned that split lunch periods would keep them from connecting with friends or taking part in extracurricular activities that meet during lunch. Podesta told us he didn't expect the level of pushback the district received about the change.
It's a bit stronger than we might have expected because this was a fairly common practice. In past years, pre-COVID, the large high schools had multiple lunches.
After we spoke, the district announced a bit of a compromise. Seattle high schools can now choose to allow a single lunch period on Wednesdays. We're going to keep an eye on how that lands with students. And we discussed a lot more than just the lunch schedule. Here's the rest of my conversation with Interim SPS Superintendent Fred Podesta. Let's turn to the issue of the budget, because the budget shortfall was a big issue. It started a lot of conversations about potential school closures last year. It didn't end up being as dire this time around, but the district is still facing $80 million in a budget shortfall. What are the major steps that the district is going to be taking in the next months to address that?
So we're going to have to look, at a series of issues, roughly 3/4, a bit more of our overall costs are for people. So making sure that we are using people's time wisely and allocating it where there's the greatest need is important. It will be hard for us to manage our expenditures without thinking about how we staff schools, what class sizes are like. And so we want to be, very efficient and careful. We have some operational things we can look at as well. How we manage student transportation, mostly yellow school buses that we all see, is contingent on the schedule of that school day. So that's also why we're thinking about schedules at high schools and other schools, because our practice of having 2 tiers of school start times, as opposed to more tiers as other districts have and as Seattle Public Schools used to have, requires us to put more buses on the road at any one time. So that's expensive. So that's a discussion we're going to need to have. We need to think about perhaps recovering some costs from families, as other districts do for athletics and some other programs. We'll want to keep thinking about elementary schools and our portfolio of elementary schools as part of the strategic planning work we're doing. We've been benchmarking how we use resources compared to other schools across the country. Of the 120th largest school districts in the United States, we rank 9th in the number of low enrollment elementary schools that we have. And that's more than just a financial issue. We do have, we are an outlier in how many small schools we support. And if that's part of a plan and an academic strategy that we do that because we think those schools perform better, that would be one thing. But for us, it's more of just how the demographics of our city have changed. So we really need to look at that portfolio of schools and make sure it's as efficient and it's delivering results. We'll have to work with our labor partners. We have major contracts that need to be negotiated. So understanding our personnel costs over the coming years, but we're starting on that now. We always start with kind of our central office and administrative functions, what they can do to be more efficient, and looking at our operations. And we really need to get to a sustainable model, because this is every year we're finding ways. We certainly got some help from the legislature in the last session in terms of funding for some of our programs, and allowing us to use more of the local property tax levy dollars that voters have supported us with. So that's helped a bit. Well, that's why it's a little less dire, as you say, but we certainly have more work to do.
And I should note, so Seattle Public Schools operates 63 elementary schools and 11 K through 8 schools. 25 to 28 schools have fewer than 300 students. I'm cribbing from reporting by KUOW there. So what I'm hearing you say is, while the closure of schools was shelved last time around, that issue of right sizing schools is not going away. And we could still be looking at that down the road. Schools could still close.
I think we're, going to have to ask ourselves, is the best use of resources, and whether it's school consolidations or that we just rebalance our student assignment plan, that so at least the range, that we right size schools to be a little bit more balanced, and so that the resources are a little bit more balanced. But either way, the issue that is tough for students and families is, well, that means whether my school closes or I just get assigned to a different school, the experience is pretty similar. And so either one is a difficult discussion. Again, as you noted with the other entities reporting, we have a high number of schools under the 300. Our neighboring districts typically don't have any schools that small. I think the discussion needs to be, what is the portfolio of schools serving elementary and K through 8 that would deliver the best services, and not just think about the money. That efficiency is important, but it's not the main thing. That's not really the end.
Before we go, I want to talk about the issue of school resource officers. The school board vote on the idea for the pilot program at Garfield for school engagement officers, as they're called, has been delayed to October 8th. But the ask for an officer did come from Garfield, right? The principal testified before the school board this summer about his support for this program. These engagement officers had been controversial in the past. There was a push to get them out of schools. And now, because of safety concerns, it seems like the pendulum has been swinging back, at least for some constituencies. Can you explain, if this goes forward, how the pilot would work?
So there have been some changes in state law, and those, again, I think really conform to what we heard from the community, that the community is really interested in how officers are accountable, what their scope of work really is, and it's really largely focusing on building relationships and then helping protect the school from external threats. It's not about policing students. That anything about discipline, anything about working with student behaviors, that is the role of school staff. We have safety and security staff, we have school administrators. And the goal of a school engagement officer in schools that, for whatever reason, where if there are public safety issues in the surrounding community, we often have interactions with the police because of those issues. So that obviously there was a tragedy of Amar Murphy Payne dying on the Garfield campus recently, but in several years prior to that, there had been other incidents of gun violence very near the campus. There was a student not fatally injured, but injured at the bus stop. There were students injured former students and other young adults at the Teen Life Center, which is adjacent. So there've been a lot of interactions with the police department. And the point of the pilot is to go back to a model that worked successfully at Garfield for a number of years, is if there's a persistent relationship with an officer as part of the campus, can those interactions with police when they're needed, can they facilitate that? Can it make sure that the department and the police officers understand our students and have a relationship and kind of have a liaison? So when we're working with the police, it's not building a new relationship each time. And so the term engagement is used advisedly, that it's really to have a campus where it's needed, have a liaison officer that can help us work with the police, help address issues, and then again, mostly focused on perhaps threats in the neighborhood, things that are going on around the campus, not things going on in the halls of Garfield High School.
And just for background for folks, the position of the school resource officer or school engagement officer was eliminated in 2020 due in part to the longstanding concerns about disproportionate policing of students of color and equity concerns. Now, the vote on this with the school board was delayed in part because the school board director, Joe Mizrahi, wanted time to draft an amendment that he said would help bridge the gap between students who wanted these officers here and students who did not. We didn't get a lot more details. The Urbanist reported on this. Is there any update on that amendment and what that might mean?
I know Director Mizrahi has done some engagement with the Garfield community, and he's working on his amendment. I wouldn't want to comment on his behalf of exactly what he wants to introduce, but this is not an easy issue. That's why we're teeing it up as a pilot. And we have had emphasis patrols by the Seattle Police Department. Garfield has a complex campus where there's city property adjacent, what's known as a Teen Life Center, and there's a community center on the other side of that. So there's been more of a police presence since last fall in the area of the campus. And so Dr. Hart, the principal, had done some work with students of, well, how are they reacting to that? And how would they feel about going the next step? And staff and students were supportive, but there were certainly also some concerns that as a uniformed, as a sworn officer, part of our community, a good idea. So that's why he's interested in a pilot to see, so we can gauge students' reactions. Does this make you feel safer? Does it make you feel less safe? How did this help us interact with the police on a larger scale? And so I think Director Mizrahi has some own thoughts about how a potential agreement might work and some parameters for us to put around such a pilot. And that's what he's expecting, what I believe he's going to introduce in his amendment. But I would refer to him on what it's specifically about.
And by the way, that vote's scheduled for Wednesday as of now, so we'll keep an eye on that. Just final question here, Superintendent. You have said that this interim role, it's really an interim for you. You don't want the full-time job permanently. That was previously. Are you still in that mindset, or are you open to the idea of being in the mix here for a permanent role?
No, I'm committed to Seattle Public Schools and will be happy to help during this transition period however I can. I think the community, is looking for a reset with Seattle Public Schools and leadership. So I don't think we pursuing this role on a permanent basis is helpful to manage that transition, or is the direction the district should go. But I love Seattle Public Schools. I am committed to it, and I'll help however I can.
When we get to June, what will make you think, okay, this was a successful school year with you as superintendent? What is that kind of will give you that feeling?
I think anyone who has the pleasure of attending our graduation ceremonies and seeing people move on, that always makes every year a success. I mean, this is really the start of so many young people's lives. I mean, every year, we enjoy a lot of success every year, and our students enjoy a lot of success every year. We don't serve all students as equitably as we need to, and that is the better services we can provide to the students that we're not serving well now. If we can keep moving that needle, that'll be a big success, particularly in the very difficult years coming back to in-person learning after COVID. Schools are starting strong. We're staffed in all positions. I think we're poised for more success, but it's always a privilege to see all those graduates, and we need those rates to go up. In this fall, for the first time in 5 years, our kindergarten enrollment this year is higher than it was last year at this time. And So that's an encouraging
That's
sign
pretty big, yeah,
in
after
terms of
sliding enrollment for several years. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's kind of stabilized and we're poised for growth. Although I see in the Times this morning reporting the demographics of children in Seattle are a challenge, but we need to serve the children who are here, even if there are fewer of them. We want to make sure that Seattle Public Schools is a provider of choice, and that people come to our district because it's a remarkable district, just like Seattle's a remarkable city.
Yeah, fertility rates dropping in the city. I think you're referencing that reporting that will be maybe showing up in demographics down the line for kindergarten. We will see. We've been talking with Interim Superintendent of Seattle Public Schools, Fred Podesta. Thank you very much for your time and for walking us through all these issues that are facing the schools right now.
Thank you so much, Libby. I really appreciate you having me, and again, your interest in Seattle Public Schools.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.